Hello and welcome to the Digitally Overwhelmed podcast. My name is Cynthia Pacheco, and I'm on a mission to help online businesses step out of digital overwhelm and step into their creative potential. This podcast is all about helping women get more in tune with the analytics and SEO side of their business without the digital burnout. Get more information about the podcast at digitalbloomiq.com. Hey friends, how's it going? Welcome to the Digitally Overwhelmed podcast. I'm Cynthia, your host, and I run Digital Bloom IQ, where I help health and wellness businesses get found in Google and heal more of the world. This is episode 151 of the podcast, and today I'm going to be talking all about creating a blogging plan for your website and for your marketing. Can you believe that we are already in September of 2020? It's been a crazy year, to say the least, for a bunch of different reasons. But I'm really looking forward to talking about this because it's something a lot of people ask me about, and I've got some really good ideas and a step-by-step process to consider, not just to do blogging, but to be consistent with your blogging. And having a blogging plan can be just a night and day sort of experience because there's an intentionality behind how you're approaching your website. My favorite analogy for this is having a plant. I've been getting much better at, growing a garden and having indoor plants. And I find that at the beginning, when I first get the plant, I'm so excited and I'm like, literally watching it every second of the day. And then over time, I kind of lose that intentionality, and it's because there is no setup and there's no strategy, right, behind it. And so the same thing probably happens to your blog. When you first get your website, everything's neat and tidy and you're just so inspired. You want to write all the content. And then over time, you forget about it, and it's easy to get carried away with the more addictive nature of social media. And blogging is definitely slower paced, and there's just kind of like a tranquility to it. So I think it's a great complement to any other engagement or social media stuff you're doing. So to complement this episode, I recommend you listen to, if your website is new, I have episode 130, SEO for new sites. And there I talk a little bit about some of the key actions you can take for a newer baby site. And then episode 131 is SEO for older sites. So this is sites that are 3 to 5 years old, some of the actions you can take to get ranked in Google. I also have a how to start a health and wellness blog. And that's actually, it's information that anybody can use, even if you don't have a health and wellness website. That's on my blog on digitalbloomiq.com/how-to-start-a-health and wellness blog with dashes between all those words. I will include all this in the show notes, which is also on my website, digitalbloomiq.com/SEO/blogging-plan. So let's get into it. What is a blogging plan to start? So a blogging plan is basically a intention and a documentation. So this could happen on a piece of paper. It could happen inside of Google Drive. It could happen in your Asana. It could be on a whiteboard. It could be on the back of your hand. Wherever you want to document it and remember that it's there. So I do recommend setting reminders. We're going to talk a little bit about how to make it a realistic plan for you. But I do recommend whatever you end up deciding it's going to be, that it is documented and that it is as specific as can be, because the more specific you get, the more likely it will happen. And the more you can see how that's going to fit into your day-to-day life. Sometimes we imagine, this happens to me a lot, I imagine something's going to happen a certain way and then it doesn't. And having it written down helps you visualize if that's like a realistic thing. And I'm not saying realistic in a limiting way. I'm saying in a safe way, in a way where you can complete that and you feel confident and you can enjoy the process. I am all about enjoying the process. And I don't want you ever to feel like SEO is like gritting your teeth, like, tensing up and like, oh, I have to get through this. It can actually be a flowing kind of process. I think the only difference is that we need to learn to slow down, and I'm included in this, just like chill out, and then the words start flowing and just, enjoy the process. Okay, so I'm going to give you 3 steps to creating a blogging plan. So step number 1 is review your current marketing rhythms and cycles. One of the biggest mistakes I see my clients and my audience make when it comes to SEO is thinking about it as this whole separate thing, and even just saying it out loud like that, oh, it feels so heavy. It's like this whole other thing I need to be doing. Where am I going to find the time to do that? I'm already busy. I've got a lot of stuff going on. So looking at what you're doing right now and the rhythms that are working for you in your marketing and your content, and then finding a way to integrate SEO into something that's existing is the best way to ensure consistency, authenticity, and just overall enjoyment. So let me give you an example. Right now, I do weekly podcasts. So whether I am recording them every week, which I've been doing lately, or I have seasons of my business where I will batch a bunch of episodes and I will schedule them out. So both of those are totally acceptable and fine. And I just know that every Friday, there's an episode that comes out. It's just how it is. I also have an email newsletter, which, by the way, you can sign up for if you go to my site. And you can just sign up for the search personas worksheet, which is on the footer. And there you'll automatically get a search personas worksheet, as well as then get on my email list. So every week usually on Fridays, I send also the email newsletter. I post daily in my Instagram, in my Facebook groups, on my Facebook page, in my Facebook group. I write blog posts. So the blog posts for my own SEO plan is usually weekly when it goes out with my podcast. So I have decided that these rhythms work for me, and the rhythms that I have might not be the same ones you have. So you need to take a moment to look at that. And maybe you've never even thought about this before. So this is a great time to become more aware of what are your marketing rhythms? How are you publishing consistently? And if you're not doing things consistently, how do you want to shift things so that it is consistent? So once you've got a sense of where you're publishing and what the rhythm is, you can look at how can SEO and how can blogging fit into that rhythm. So like I just mentioned, my podcast episodes come with a blog post. And I know that I need time on a weekly basis to not just record the podcast, but write out the blog post. Sometimes it's a longer post, sometimes it's a shorter post, depending on the content, but it just happens, right? And it just feels right because it's something I'm already doing. So for example, for this episode, as soon as I'm done recording this, I'm going to sit down and write the content because it's fresh in my head. Sometimes I do the inverse. I write first and then record, depending on the content. There is a caveat. Sometimes I actually have a separate blog post that has nothing to do with the podcast because there are keywords I want to target that are outside the podcast. But in general, this rhythm has been working for me. And so I want you to think about that. I want you to look at, maybe for you, your goal is every 2 weeks. And so if you want to create a blog post every 2 weeks, what other content could you pair up with and just combine in terms of rhythm? Maybe when you sit down to write your social media posts, you extend that task for another 30 minutes and write a blog post, or for another hour. If you're doing batching on a monthly basis, maybe you sit down and you add another hour and you write out your blog post for the month. So some of you might be wondering what frequency is best. And I talk a little bit about that in the other podcast episode, but I think what's more important is what frequency is going to be consistent to you. And this is what I move on to in step 2 of this process, is what feels safe to commit to. So I'm saying the word safe maybe a strange way of using it, but I'm saying it in a way of like, not that you're safe or you're in danger, but more like it's a comfortable place for you to say, I'm going to publish a blog post once a week, or I'm going to publish a blog post once a quarter, or I'm going to publish, a blog post every day. Hey, it's possible. There's no limitations. Some of you have a lot to say, and writing content with your blog is just really exciting. So I'm never going to say it's too much or too little, but I will say that I would think about how can you commit to that frequency for at least 90 days in a comfortable way. So like I said, for me, weekly works really well. But I have been sitting down on a monthly basis to plan out other topics that I want to write about. For example, right now, I'm working on an SEO tips for beginners blog post that I want to spend some extra time with outside of these weekly rhythms. So as long as you're intentional about it and you can say comfortably, okay, I can create that content for this amount of time with this rhythm, then that's good. And some of you might be saying, well, but Cynthia, doesn't it make a big difference if I publish once a week versus once a month? Yes, it does. Especially if you're starting out, doing a blog post once a week will get you traction faster with your SEO. But I wouldn't want you to do that if it felt like you were just suffering the whole time, because that's not why we started our businesses. I'm not saying that sometimes there isn't a little bit of sweat and a little bit of, exertion, but it shouldn't feel painful. And the weekly rhythm that you choose, I want you to enjoy parts of the process. I want it to feel fun and exciting and something that you can look forward to. And I think the way we get there is by being super intentional and creating that time. So for some of us, once a week is too much. It's a lot. And so I rather you say, okay, I'm going to publish every 2 weeks and I'm going to do that consistently for 90 days. I think you'll get better results that way than if you force yourself to write every week and then your content quality is not good. People feel that. People feel like you're writing, and when they're reading the words, they can feel if that's not what you're, if you haven't put your mission and your magic into your content, then people will feel that. And so again, I really prefer that the rhythm and the consistency piece is something you can really commit to and enjoy versus me saying like, oh, well, you have to just publish once a week because that's what all SEO people do. So I am really about a sustainable long-term SEO plan that feels good, that just is like part of your life that you can just, you can get behind. And of course that can change. That's why 90 days is a great batch of time. Maybe in 90 days you say, okay, I can actually ramp it up and I can do one post a week. Or maybe in 90 days it's just a busy season and so you dial it back and it turns into every 2 weeks or once a month. But you see how that rhythm and that intentionality suddenly doesn't feel like you're failing all the time. You're just really intentionally saying, okay, in the next 3 months, I'm going to just commit to one blog post a month. And it's going to be amazing because the time I spend creating that content is going to be really quality time. And I'm going to know like that's what I'm going to just do amazing work in. Okay, so I'm just going to take a moment before I get into the third step. And I wanted to talk to you guys about my SEO Strategy Intensives. So this podcast is going live on September 4th. And by midnight on September 4th, I am putting a deadline on the bonus for the SEO Strategy Intensive, which is a content review. So what does that mean? So the intensives are this beautiful balance of strategy and taking action. So during the call, we're going to actually be adding keywords to your website. We're going to be talking about your SEO strategy, but we're going to be making also changes to your site, which probably freaks some of you out, and that's a good thing. After the call, you get 2 weeks of email support where you can continue to ask me questions and start making some of the changes we've talked about in the call. And what will probably happen is in the 2 weeks after, you're going to start writing using one of the keywords that I send you after the call. So whichever keyword you choose, you're going to start writing, you're going to create your beautiful blog post, and you get to send me that specific page for me to review and give you feedback on. So that's the content review. And that's something that I'm currently only doing with my one-to-one done for you clients, both retainers and the AIM process. So this is really a special bonus that not that many people have access to. So that's really exciting. And then, after September 4th, I'm still going to be providing the SEO Strategy Intensives. There are limited spots. Currently, there are 2 spots. I'm recording this on September 3rd. So there are 2 spots left in September, and you can still sign up after, but you will not get that bonus. So if this is something you've been wanting to take action on, you've been wanting to just get your SEO ducks in a row, get a plan in place, this isn't about spending more time. This is about creating something that you can easily add to your marketing plan right now and start getting that organic traffic, especially if you have funnels set up, if you've got some passive income products or services that people can buy right away on your website. Having an SEO plan can directly send traffic to those offers, and even to your higher ticket offers or your consulting or your services. It can do that. And so having this amazing strategy session will help you just feel like it's making sense to you. I'm going to talk more about it at the end as well, but I did want to mention that. And the last thing I want to mention about that is that after September, so October 1st, the price will be going up. So right now it is, I don't know what the discount is exactly, but right now it's $650. There is a payment plan, and then starting in October, it's going up to $850. So something to think about. Definitely a good opportunity. And I think this is a great time of the year because once we start getting into October, November, we have all the crazy seasonal stuff happening and things can get busy. All right. You can get more information by going to digitalbloomiq.com/SEO-strategy-intensive, or just go to my site, and on the top, there's like an announcement bar and you can click on that. All right, let's move on to step 3. And if you are interested to hear more, I will be talking more a little bit at the end. All right, so we've talked about reviewing your current marketing plan. We talked about how to create a frequency that you feel good about, that you can commit to. And these 2 steps are really important. Finally, last step is we're going to map out on a weekly basis what tasks have to happen, and also stay flexible to real life happening, and that this weekly plan might shift. So there is that balance of like creating a plan and, sticking to the plan, but also being flexible within the plan. And for example, sometimes I sit down and I record and write 2 to 3 podcast/blog posts at once because I have the time, or because I know that the following week I have a digital conference I want to go to and I won't have time to record the podcast, or I just want to take that time to do other things, or I have a big client implementation coming up and I just want to have that ready to go. So you can stay flexible in the plan, but I do recommend committing to a frequency like we did in step 2 that you can complete, and you have some of that wiggle room to change it up a little bit. So what I recommend is sitting down, opening up your calendar. You've decided on your rhythm, the rest of your marketing, and you write down the dates that your blog posts are going to go live. So if it's Fridays, you do Friday, September, blah, 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 4th, and you do all the dates for 90 days. So that's 12 weeks. And then you start to define exactly what blog posts, so the topics that you want to go live in each of those weeks. You can change it later, okay? This is just to start to put together a plan. And maybe some of you are already natural planners, but I like to get really specific because people want to know how I do it. So you do week 1, SEO tips for beginners. Week 2, creating a blogging plan. Week 3, I've been wanting to do a wellness keywords podcast, which I haven't done yet. So each week you're going to define the specific topic and try and, as much as possible, define each one. You can always move them around. You can always switch them up. Another way to go about it is you can classify them by, if you don't yet have topics, you can classify them by themes. So week 1 is like a friendly tip. Week 2 is a case study. Week 3 is a step-by-step guide, for example. So you can do it that way. Get as specific as possible. If you do have topics that you already know you want to talk about and keywords that you already want to target, then I recommend just taking the time now to define that. You can always switch them up. And a little bonus step here is looking at what you're launching, what you're selling, and making sure that those blog topics are kind of aligned with that. So, for example, I'm coming into a launch sort of soon. And so I'm looking at what blog posts are tied to what I'm going to be selling. And I don't want to be talking about something on my blog that has nothing to do with what I'll be selling in the launch. So a little bonus step for you there. Some of you, again, might be naturally thinking this way, but I did want to include that. So once you've got your week by week plan, you're going to sit down and you're going to make sure that you schedule the time to get all those things done. So whether it's writing on a weekly basis or on a monthly basis, batching out that stuff, or having a little bit of extra time to look at keywords, a little bit of extra time to think about strategy on a monthly basis, whatever you need, however you work, get your calendar, book out that time. And then just make sure that wherever you have all these systems and plans in place, make sure that this blogging plan is now in a place that you can easily access. So if you use Asana, put it in your Asana. If you use a notebook, make sure that notebook is something you look at and that you can just remember, okay, this is the plan. I also recommend putting at least a monthly reminder to review the plan again and make sure that you are completing them. And also, spend some time looking at how you're going to celebrate every time you publish, or maybe you can do like a little incentive system. Like if you do all 4 blog posts for the month that you'd planned, you go out and you get yourself a coffee, or you buy yourself a new notebook. I'm thinking of myself here. I definitely incentivize myself with beautiful notebooks, or like whatever makes you happy. Creating this incentive plan, especially if you haven't been blogging for a while, it will make a difference. So those are my tips. Let's go through the 3-step process again. So number 1, review your current marketing rhythms and cycles. Understand, get awareness, and think about how SEO can integrate into what you already have. Number 2, think about and define what is a rhythm and a consistency that you feel safe committing to. And by safe, I mean comfortable, kind of like those pair of jeans that are snug, but they're not cutting off circulation. You know what I'm talking about. You don't want it sagging, but you don't want to like look like a like a squeezed up thing. You want to feel comfortable, but you want to feel good, right? It looks good. And number 3, map out your weekly plan. I recommend weekly because I feel like it's granular enough. But if you do monthly batch posting, then maybe you don't need weekly, you just do monthly. Put specific dates, decide when everything's going to launch, and then spend some time. And I do recommend doing this in one go. Spend some time just mapping out the next 90 days and how, what you're going to be doing in terms of writing, adding keywords, researching topics, and making sure that all that is going to happen, right? All right, my friends, I hope that was helpful. I'm going to just talk a couple more minutes about the SEO Strategy Intensives. So before this month, I did have kind of a strategy call, but I was realizing that one of the biggest things people were struggling with wasn't the strategy. I mean, that's useful, but it was actually taking action. And this is across the board, this is like a big thing that I see a lot of my clients do. And so you either have two choices. You either hire someone to do it for you, or you find a way to do it yourself. And by find a way, I mean you need to shift your mindset and your intention behind SEO. And you need to just decide, hey, this is something I want to do. I just really want to do it well. So with the SEO intensives, I decided that what would be of service to my audience, for those of my audience who want to do SEO on themselves, they're not ready for someone to do it for them. Having a one-off session, we are actually making changes to their site, and just taking that action would really, really help people. And this was like immediately it just clicked for me, and I realized, like, of course, people don't want to talk about their SEO. They want to see me do it for them so that they feel like they can do it for themselves. So the call itself is 2 hours. Okay, wait, let's take a step back. So before the call, when you sign up, so the first thing I do want to mention is there is an application process, because I want to make sure that you're going to get the most out of the intensive and that it's a good fit. So if you go to the sales page, you're going to see a button that says click here to apply. It's a really short form. I ask you a couple questions, and I basically look at your site and I make sure that you're at the right stage of your business to have this type of service. And if for whatever reason it's not a good fit, I will recommend other resources for you to check out so that you are still taking action on your SEO. Okay, so let's say you apply and everything goes well. I'll send you the payment link and the paperwork. Once that's complete, you're going to get the pre-biz questionnaire. So this in itself is really, really helpful. And I've had people mention that it's changed the way they look at their website, because I ask some really specific questions about how your website is playing a role in your marketing and in your business goals overall. A lot of people don't think about it like that. So I'm asking some questions for me so that I can get to know your business and I can get to know your audience, but I'm also asking them to bring awareness to you and for you to start looking at things a little bit differently. So you fill out the questionnaire and we book a time for you to have your intensive. And a couple days before the intensive, I'll send you an agenda link. Since it's 2 hours, I want to make sure that you understand what's going to happen. And I'll, probably send you just a couple things to keep in mind to have ready before the call. So once we have the call, we hop on, you have your tea or your coffee, you're ready to go. And we dive in. And the first thing we do is we talk about your search personas. So a search persona is someone we want to be targeting with your content. And we're going to actually be creating 2 search personas. And there's a reason for that. If you sign up and apply, you'll understand why. But we'll be defining 2 search personas. And this is a crucial part of the process that a lot of people miss. They just dive right into the keyword research and they don't think about the who and the why. So that's the first part of the call. And whatever that takes, we're going to go through and make sure that there's absolute clarity. And I do a lot of heavy lifting here because I know people struggle with this. So I give you a lot of examples and a lot of ideas, but at the end of the day, you get to kind of have the final say, and all the documentation that I brainstorm during the call, you have access to after the call. So once we're done with the search personas, I dive into my keyword research and implementation process, and we do some keyword research for your brand. And the idea is that I research the keywords, I use my SEO tools, and I show you how I do it. And then we add the keywords to your 5 top pages of your website. So these are not blog posts. These would be your homepage, your about page, services page, contact page, and you've got an extra there, but it needs to be one of your kind of main site sections. It can't be a blog post because we're going to be using your branding keywords, right? So Here you learn keyword research and you also learn keyword implementation. And not only do you learn it, you see me doing it and I do it for you. If you're feeling brave, I let you take on one of the pages and you do it for yourself and you have me kind of helping you there. Some people don't want to do that. They just want me to do it. It's totally up to you. But all of the session is recorded, so it's kind of cool because it's like a one personalized lesson there. All right, and then the last part of the call is we talk about your blogging plan and your SEO plan for the next 90 days. And we make sure that you're 100% on board, you're enthusiastic, and you're just ready to make it happen. So the 2-hour call is that. And then after the call, usually within the same day, if not within the 24 hours, I send you some notes, I send you the recording, I send you 5 keyword topics to blog about. So these are topics that we maybe talked about during the call, but I take some extra time to do keyword research. And I also send you a custom blogging plan. So all of this is kind of something that gets talked about on the call, but I like to send it after because it just really solidifies the plan and it gets you on board and accountable. So like I mentioned, after the call, you have 2 weeks of email support. And the way I recommend to use that is to start taking action and just have my support when doubts come up, when you're just not sure about something, and I'll help you with that. And like I said, if you sign up before September 4th at midnight Pacific, we'll see. It's a little flexible there. You get also a content review. So like I mentioned, I will be looking at a specific blog post. So in this case, it is a blog post, something that it's like 80 to 90% done. And I give you my feedback before you hit publish. And that's just an amazing opportunity to learn even more from me. And like I said, I have not offered that to anyone, whether only my one-to-one done for you clients. All right, my friends, that is it. That's all I have for you today. I hope that you have a great day and catch you next week. Bye. Hey, this is Cynthia, and I wanted to once again thank you so much for coming on and listening to this episode of the Digitally Overwhelmed podcast. I spend a lot of time creating these episodes and editing them and publishing them. So I would love for you to leave me a review, whatever platform you're listening to your podcast on, whether it's iTunes or something else. Go ahead and click on that review bar, give me some stars, and leave a little comment. That really helps other people just like you find the podcast and just helps them grow their business. And if you want to find out more about this episode and more about what I do, get links from the show notes that we mentioned in this episode, you could head on over to digitalbluemyq.com/podcast. And there, the latest podcast should be published. If not, you'll need to scroll through and find your podcast number. Thank you so much for listening again, and I'll catch you on the next episode of the Digitally Overwhelmed podcast. Bye.